You're kneeling on the tatami mats in your husband's ancestral home at 4 a.m., your hands trembling as you prepare the morning tea ceremony. One mistake in the precise ritual movements could mean disgrace for your entire birth family. Your mother-in-law watches from the shadows, ready to report any failure to your husband, who has the legal right to divorce you and send you back in shame, or worse, order your death for bringing dishonor to his lineage. This isn't a story about romantic love or personal fulfillment. This is the reality of being a samurai wife in feudal Japan, where marriage was warfare by other means, where your survival depended on navigating deadly political intrigue within your own home, and where a single misstep could destroy not just your life, but the lives of everyone you'd ever loved. Today, we're entering the hidden world of samurai women, where marriage was a strategic alliance more dangerous than any battlefield, where duty mattered infinitely more than happiness, and where the most lethal enemies weren't invading armies, but the family members sleeping under your own roof. Introduction. The Edo period is remembered for its peace and stability, but within the walls of samurai households, women fought their own wars, psychological battles where the stakes were life, death, and family honor. Marriage for samurai women wasn't about love or personal choice. It was miai, arranged marriage, a strategic negotiation between families seeking political advantage, military alliances, or economic benefit. You were a chess piece in a game you didn't choose to play, with rules you couldn't change. The moment you entered your husband's house, you ceased to exist as an individual. You became yome, daughter-in-law, a role that meant serving not just your husband, but his entire extended family hierarchy. Your birth family's investment in your marriage could determine their survival during political upheavals. Statistics reveal the brutal reality. Samurai women had a divorce rate of nearly 25%, but divorce meant returning to your family in disgrace, often unable to remarry. Suicide rates among samurai wives were significantly higher than among merchant or peasant women, suggesting the unbearable psychological pressure of their circumstances. The rigid class system created dramatic differences in women's experiences. The wife of a high-ranking daimyo lived in luxury but faced assassination attempts and political conspiracies, while the wife of a low-ranking rural samurai, goshi, might struggle with poverty while maintaining the appearance of samurai dignity. The introduction of Neo-Confucian principles through Chinese learning, kangaku, scholars created increasingly restrictive ideologies that transformed women from relatively independent partners in earlier periods into virtual prisoners of family duty. Chapter 1. The Marriage Trap. Marriage negotiations for samurai families resembled military campaigns with intelligence gathering, strategic positioning, and calculated risks that could determine the survival of entire bloodlines. The arranged marriage process began years before the actual meeting. Families employed networks of go-betweens called matchmakers, nakodo, who investigated potential matches with the thoroughness of military spies. They examined not just wealth and status, but political loyalties, family health histories, and any scandals that might compromise the alliance. A girl's value in marriage negotiations depended on factors completely outside her control: her father's rank, her family's financial stability, her brother's military service records, and even her ancestors' behavior generations earlier. The slightest stain on family honor could make her unmarriageable, condemning her to a lifetime of dependence on male relatives. Marriage contracts were political documents that transferred ownership of the woman from her birth family to her husband's clan. These agreements specified her duties, outlined the consequences of failure, and established the financial arrangements that bound the families together. Once married, a samurai woman discovered that her husband was often the least dangerous person in her new household. The real threats came from mothers-in-law who saw daughters-in-law as competitors for their sons' attention, sisters-in-law who resented newcomers disrupting established hierarchies, and concubines who schemed to elevate their own children above legitimate heirs. The family house system meant that individual desires were subordinated to family interests. A woman might be ordered to divorce a beloved husband if political circumstances changed, or forced to remain married to an abusive spouse if the alliance remained valuable to both families. Financial arrangements made escape nearly impossible. A divorced woman returned to her birth family empty-handed, becoming an economic burden that poor families couldn't afford. Wealthy families might refuse to take back daughters who had failed in their marriages, preferring to maintain their political relationships. The legal system offered no protection for married women. Husbands had absolute authority over their wives' lives and deaths. A man could kill his wife for adultery, disobedience, or even suspected disloyalty, with no legal consequences, as long as he could justify his actions as protecting family honor. Chapter 2: The Domestic Battlefield. Daily life for samurai women was a constant performance where every action was scrutinized for signs of inadequacy, disloyalty, or failure to uphold family honor. The morning routine began before dawn with ritual preparations that could take hours. The way she arranged her hair, applied her makeup, and dressed conveyed messages about her family's status, personal virtue, and respect for household hierarchy. A single detail out of place could trigger accusations of bringing shame to the family name. Household management required diplomatic skills that would challenge professional negotiators. They had to balance the competing interests of servants, relatives, and visitors, while maintaining harmony that reflected well on their husbands' leadership abilities. Failure to manage household conflicts could result in being blamed for undermining family stability. The mother-in-law, shutome relationship was perhaps the most dangerous dynamic in the household. The mother-in-law had absolute authority over daily activities and could make the wife's life unbearable through constant criticism, impossible demands, and deliberate sabotage of relationships with other family members. Child rearing presented constant hazards for samurai wives. Producing male heirs was samurai women's primary duty, but the high infant mortality rates meant that failure to produce surviving sons could be interpreted as divine punishment for moral inadequacy. Even successful mothers faced criticism about their children's behavior, health, and development. The presence of concubines in many households created ongoing psychological warfare. These women often had more freedom and less responsibility than legitimate wives, while their children competed directly with the wife's children for inheritance and status. Samurai women had to maintain dignity while competing for their husbands' attention and resources. Seasonal festivals and ceremonies required perfect execution of complex rituals that demonstrated family prestige. The New Year celebrations, Festival of the Dead, Obon, and tea ceremony performances were opportunities to display their cultural refinement, or public venues for humiliation if they failed to meet expectations. The constant surveillance from multiple family members meant that samurai women had no privacy and few opportunities to express their authentic thoughts or feelings. Every word, gesture, and facial expression was evaluated for signs of dissatisfaction or rebellion that could justify punishment or divorce. Chapter 3: The Price of Failure. Failure to meet the impossible standards expected of samurai wives carried consequences that extended far beyond personal punishment, destroying entire family networks and condemning future generations. The most common cause of disgrace was the failure to produce male heirs. Childless wives faced increasing pressure and blame as years passed without pregnancy. After several years, families might demand divorce or permit the husband to take concubines, relegating the wife to a humiliating secondary status in her own household. Even minor social mistakes could trigger accusations of bringing dishonor to the family name. Speaking too loudly, laughing inappropriately, or failing to demonstrate proper deference to higher-ranking visitors could result in severe punishment and long-term loss of family trust. Adultery accusations, whether true or false, meant automatic death sentences for samurai women. The definition of adultery was so broad that innocent conversations with men outside the family could be interpreted as evidence of immoral behavior requiring lethal punishment. Political mistakes during times of instability could condemn entire extended families. If her behavior suggested sympathy for the wrong political faction, her husband might be forced to demonstrate his loyalty by punishing or divorcing her, while the birth family faced suspicion and potential persecution. Divorce meant returning to her birth family in disgrace, often unable to remarry and becoming a permanent economic burden. Her failure reflected badly on the parents' judgment and the siblings' marriage prospects, making her responsible for damaging multiple family lines. Some families chose extreme measures to avoid the dishonor of public scandal. Forcing a disgraced daughter-in-law to commit suicide preserved the family's reputation while eliminating the evidence of their poor judgment in marriage negotiations. The psychological impact on surviving family members created lasting trauma that affected family dynamics for decades. Children learned to associate love with conditional approval, while husbands developed patterns of emotional distance designed to protect themselves from future disappointments. Chapter 4: The Survival Strategies. The women who survived and sometimes thrived in samurai households developed sophisticated psychological strategies that turned apparent powerlessness into subtle forms of influence and control. The most successful samurai wives mastered the art of strategic invisibility, making themselves so perfectly appropriate that they became unnoticeable, avoiding the attention that often led to criticism and punishment. They learned to anticipate needs, prevent problems, and manage crises without taking credit or drawing focus to their capabilities. Building alliance networks within households required careful cultivation of relationships with servants, children, and lower-status family members who could provide information, support, and protection during difficult periods. These informal coalitions often proved more valuable than official family hierarchies. Economic survival strategies involved secretly developing skills and knowledge that could provide independence if marriage failed. Some women learned herbal medicine, textile production, or other marketable abilities while appearing to focus solely on domestic duties. Child-rearing became a form of long-term investment, where raising loyal, capable children created future allies who might protect their mothers during old age or family crises. Successful mothers ensured their sons understood their debts to maternal sacrifice and wisdom. Information management was crucial for survival, knowing when to speak, when to remain silent, and how to share intelligence in ways that demonstrated value without appearing threatening. Women who became trusted advisors to their husbands gained influence that transcended their official powerlessness. Cultural accomplishments in poetry, calligraphy, or music provided opportunities for recognition and respect that didn't threaten male authority. Exceptional artistic skills could elevate a woman's status and provide her with identity beyond her reproductive functions. The cultivation of reputation for wisdom and good judgment allowed some women to become informal advisors whose opinions were sought on important family decisions. This influence required extreme discretion, but could provide protection and purpose that transcended official limitations. Chapter 5: The Women Who Changed Everything. Some samurai women transcended their limitations to become power brokers who shaped political events, protected their families, and created new possibilities for future generations. Lady Kasuga, wet nurse to the third Tokugawa shogun, wielded influence that exceeded many male officials. She controlled access to the shogun, influenced policy decisions, and accumulated wealth and power that made her one of the most important political figures of her era. During the final decades of the Edo period, some samurai women became crucial intelligence networks that helped their families navigate the dangerous political transitions. They used their supposed invisibility to gather information, communicate between opposing factions, and arrange safe passage for family members. The wives of domain leaders often served as diplomatic channels for sensitive negotiations that couldn't be conducted through official male representatives. Their meetings at temples or cultural events provided cover for political discussions that shaped regional alliances and conflicts. Educational innovations by exceptional women created new models for female development. Some established informal schools for girls, developed new approaches to cultural education, or preserved important literary and historical knowledge during periods of political chaos. Literary achievements by samurai women created lasting cultural contributions that influenced social attitudes and political developments. Their poetry, diaries, and fictional works provided insights into female experiences that shaped public understanding of women's capabilities. During the Meiji Restoration, many samurai women played crucial roles in helping their families adapt to the new political and economic realities. Their flexibility and resourcefulness often proved more valuable than traditional male approaches to honor and status. Chapter 6: The Psychological Price of Perfection. The psychological toll of living as performance art rather than authentic human beings created mental health crises that were rarely acknowledged but profoundly shaped samurai women's experiences and family dynamics. The constant surveillance and evaluation created anxiety disorders that modern psychology would recognize as severe trauma responses. Women developed hypervigilance that made relaxation impossible, checking and rechecking their appearance, words, and actions for potential sources of criticism. Depression was endemic among samurai wives but interpreted as moral weakness rather than medical condition. The cultural expectation of constant cheerfulness and gratitude made acknowledging sadness or despair impossible, forcing women to suffer in complete isolation. The suppression of authentic personality traits to conform to family expectations created identity crises, where women lost track of their genuine preferences, opinions, and desires. Many reported feeling like actors playing roles they couldn't escape even in private moments. The internalization of impossible standards led to perfectionism that made normal human mistakes feel like moral catastrophes. Women developed obsessive behaviors around household management, personal appearance, and social performance that exhausted their psychological resources. The development of elaborate fantasy lives provided psychological escape from unbearable daily realities. Some women created rich interior worlds where they possessed agency, respect, and authentic relationships that contrasted sharply with their actual circumstances. Conclusion: the experience of being a samurai wife in feudal Japan reveals the extraordinary psychological resilience required to survive in systems designed to eliminate individual identity in service of family honor. Yet from this harsh reality emerged something remarkable. Women who developed survival strategies so sophisticated that they managed to preserve their humanity while appearing to surrender it completely. Their legacy challenges our assumptions about power and resistance. While they rarely achieved open rebellion, their subtle forms of influence and survival created cracks in oppressive systems that eventually enabled more dramatic changes in later generations. Perhaps most importantly, they discovered that dignity could be maintained even within systems designed to destroy it, that love could flourish despite being denied recognition, and that individual worth could persist even when society refused to acknowledge it. The next time you encounter systems that demand conformity at the expense of authenticity, Remember the samurai women who learned to survive by becoming invisible, and who, in their invisibility, preserved the possibility of becoming visible again. Thanks for watching. In the next episode, we'll explore what happened to criminals and outcasts in Edo, Japan, where being born into the wrong social class meant a lifetime of brutal persecution, where even the smallest crime could result in horrific public execution, and where entire communities survived by doing the jobs that society deemed too shameful for anyone else to touch.